All right. Howdy, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast. As always, we are brought to you by our sponsors, Cryptic, Blokes Modern Men's Health, Mount Tough Fitness, Trapline Beard Oil. So do me a favor, go wherever you're listening to this podcast, leave us a 5-star review. Use the promo codes there for some of these great brands, get some good discounts, and show some love for the people who help make this show possible. Now, today's guest is someone I've been following for a while on the old Instagram. He's a nuisance and recreational trapper hailing from the great state of Wisconsin, tradesman and seemingly part-time historian. Jake Roller, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. And, before we got on, I'm sure it'll come up at some point, but I was admiring your cauliflower ear too, another common thread amongst many people who trap. So I know we were talking that you wrestled, you did jiu-jitsu. So I think it is a testament to the type 2 fun that a lot of us trappers enjoy.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, to get us started, man, like I ask everybody the same question to kick it off, but can you recount the first core memory you ever have of being exposed to trapping?
So when I was probably 5th, 6th grade in school, there was a kid that lived down the road from me, and I always had a bunch of skateboard ramps in my driveway. So like all the neighborhood kids would show up. We'd have a crew of like 5, 6 guys skateboarding there. And one of them lived right down the road, and his dad was a big trapper, and he was a trapper. So I just kind of my whole life saw it. Like whenever I go to his house, it knew that they were doing it, but it was just one of them things that was always around me, but never got into it then by any means.
Well, that's interesting. So, I mean, you were a skater kid then. I mean, I have some similar background in that too. So, I mean, was your family not a hunting and outdoors family, or were they?
My grandpa was a deer hunter. My grandpa actually grew up in the UP of Michigan, so he was a big hunter, and he had relatives that trapped. But by the time I was old enough to do any of that, my grandpa was kind of done doing that, retirement age. He was over it, so it was just wasn't really something my family did once I was old enough to.
Yeah. So you're, 5th, 6th grade, you're being exposed to it, but ultimately, at what point did you get to actually participate, or what was it in your life that made you say, "Oh, like I actually want to try this thing"?
So I didn't actually start hunting until probably 19 years old. After I was always big into snowboarding, so like once fall time came, those friends went hunting and I went snowboarding. That
Well,
was just
you have mountains in Wisconsin?
we would always. So my great grandma still lived in the UP of Michigan, and we were from November to March. It was every Friday night. We packed up the car, drove to the UP, skied, snowboarded all weekend, and then back home on Sunday. And once I was like 19 or so, I was in tech school to be a tool and die maker, machinist, and that kind of phased out. And I started getting into hunting with all of my friends who hunted their whole lives, and it just kind of started deer hunting, started goose hunting with them, and then they were all big coon hunters. And they actually the same guy I was talking about, he had hounds right at his house. They were coon hunting all the time. A lot of guys that would go up north bear hunting with their hounds. And then I just sounds kind of goofy, but like through the coon hunting, I got excited about like watching these guys skin them and then being like, okay, I can take this fur and tan it, make it into leather, and make something out of it. So before I even started trapping, I was into coon hunting with those guys and actually like skinning and messing around with them. And then fast forward, I think I had my daughter when I was 22. I was pretty young. And so I had my daughter. Long story short, things didn't work out with her mom and I. And, through all of that, I ended up moving, ended up going to second shift so I could, watch my daughter during the day. And then all of that coon hunting just kind of stopped because obviously that's a nighttime thing. And I spent like the first year and a half of her life, like, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I had time to do that. And then one day I was sitting at work and I was reading a fur fish game and I saw an article about coon trapping. And at the time I was living in a state forest, like a 30,000 acre state forest just west of where I live now. And it just dawned on me, like, I could trap myself. Like, I don't need hounds to go and do this. Like, I can go and get traps. That was I think that was like the summer of 2012 or 2013. And it was like the next day I signed up for Trapper Ed. I was like, screw it, we're doing this. And by that fall, we were trapping, and we've been doing it ever since. So,
wow, that's awesome. And that's a unique story amongst trappers where you were probably, well, you were doing fur handling before you ever got trapped. So, talk a little bit about that for me. Like, obviously, you're shooting coons, but then you're still skinning them. And you said you went straight into tanning. So, were you like self tanning? Like, what was kind of your first experience in the fur shed, even before you got traps in the ground?
so I was, the guy who trapped, or not trapped, the guy who had the coon hounds. He taught me how to skin coons, and then like I would go with him to check traps once in a while, like way back in the day. But it was more or less just, oh, we're gonna do this before we coon hunt. So I was just hanging out with him, not thinking much of it. And he taught me how to skin coons, and then he made sure I knew how to skin them good because he was selling them at the time.
Mm.
And when he'd get like a black one or a like real goofy phase coon, I'd be like, hey, I'll give you $10 for that thing if I can try to tan it. And I was just messing around trying to tan them just to, I don't know, I was intrigued by it. That was about it.
Did you, I mean, there's always levels to everything as it relates to trapping, sports.
Yep.
Were you trying to go like primitive and do like brain tanning? Were you doing chemical tanning? Were you doing like your own stuff with acid? Like, what was your level of like curiosity when you first started to tan those goofier raccoons?
So they would always get, I can't remember the name of the magazine, but it was like a mail order catalog where they sold like coon hunting, like chaps for coon hunting and coon hunting lights and all the gear for hound hunting. And I remember they were looking through it, and there was this product called Tan It. And I was just like, all right, screw it, let's try it. So I had, when they were ordering stuff up, I had them order me a bottle of it up, and I just tried it with that. And I mean, I've probably been through 20 different products since then, but mainly like oil tans and commercial products.
What did those first ones look like when you were done with them? Were
Terrible,
they pretty passable?
horrible. Oh yeah, I had a flushing beam that I just took I think it was a 2x8 or 2x6, like a treated board, and we just sat there one night, like planing it down, sanding it down, and it was not perfectly round by any means. So it's like I was putting holes in coons trying to flesh them, and it was nice once I was trapping because I already had all that out of the way. But yeah, I made a lot of mistakes there.
Yeah, and I think that's everybody, but at least you had a mentor for that. So then, what was your methodology when you had that like light bulb moment to say like, okay, I've got a young daughter at home, nighttime coon hunting's off the table. Now I can trap really anytime once I get my trapping license. I can put them out, I can check them whenever I need to. Like, was it YouTube University like me, or was it like did you have some local mentors to like help you get your dog proofs and or whatever you were using for coon trapping at the time out in
So at first, like I said, I hopped in. We had a comprehensive course in Wisconsin back then where you could actually do it through the mail. So I just like hopped on, used everything I learned there with what I kind of already knew from, like I went along, watched those guys trap coons like in trails with 160s before. So I understood how to do that. I knew how to make a dirt hole, not as good as they did, obviously, but I kind of just used what I knew from them. And then I actually had another friend from high school that once he found out I was trapping, and he's only 2 years older than me, I believe. And he just kind of started randomly calling me like, hey, I'm going up north beaver trapping. Do you want to come with? And like, then once I got my first otter tag, he was like, hey, I don't have a tag, but I know where there's otters. I'll come give you a hand. And he, through all of this, the last like decade or so, he has been a very big help to me.
That's amazing. And when you first started, were you taking your daughter out at all, or was it kind of like separation of church and state? Like this was your time to get out the door. I'm just curious because I've started taking my daughter out on my line a little bit when we're able to, and it's not like sub-zero. But I'm curious what those first few years look like when you were trying to navigate early fatherhood, your second shift job, everything else going on. Like, how did you make the time to get out there? Because even though you're trapping and you don't have to do it at night, it's still time intensive.
Oh yeah, it was so where we were living at the time, I could literally walk across the road and I was on public land. So I
Okay.
could just like walk in the ditch across the road and set a dog proof and I was legal to trap there. So it was a lot of like her just tagging along. And then we also had a guy that lived behind us that owned 50 acres. And then outside of his 50 acres was all state forest. So it's like I had a four-wheeler there. Me and her would hop on the four-wheeler, drive as far through his property as we could. We had permission, obviously. But we would drive all the way through there, hop off, and just start hiking around the woods. Like that was probably the first 4 years of her life. Every fall, it was like she was stoked to go trapping. Like, and she's 14 now, and she still is.
That's amazing. What was the coon population like that time? Was it super dense, or was it like you set a trap, you're gonna get a coon, or were you having to like spread out a little bit and navigate like
Out there, it was spread out a little bit because I mean, I'm only there. I was like 30 miles north of Milwaukee. So it's like we get a lot of Milwaukee hunters that come up, and it's a pretty pressured area. So it was, now that I've trapped where I'm at now, that was like trapping because,
Mhm.
and also at the time, I think coons were worth like $20 a pop. So it's like every corner I went around, somebody's trapping raccoons.
Mm. Well, that's pretty crazy. So then from that spot, you trapped there for 5 years, like was it an instant hook? Because I mean, if I'm not mistaken, like you do a lot of nuisance trapping and other stuff too. Like you said, you started working with your buddy. He took you beaver trapping. He helped you with otters. Like, what was kind of the trajectory from like the intro with raccoons to like where you're at now?
So honestly, it's kind of funny because I think it was like the second year I was trapping, he took me beaver trapping. And I went back to work and I just told some guys, like, yeah, I went beaver trapping. And then the next spring, a coworker was like, hey, I got beavers overrunning my cabin up north. Can you come kill them? I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I actually didn't have own any beaver traps at the time. So I went and grabbed like 2 dozen 330s from my buddy. And I was like, all right, I know how to make a caster mount.
Hmm.
We'll try this. And I ended up getting all the beavers off this guy's property. And he was like stoked about it. And then I got back from that, and also another coworker is like, "Hey, my mother-in-law's got a woodchuck under her house. Can you come try to get it?" And I went and found the hole and just put a 160 over it. I'm like, should work. Like 2 hours later, he calls me and he's like, "Hey, you already got it." And I remember him telling me they paid some guy for weeks, some nuisance trapper for weeks trying to get that thing. And he's like, and he didn't even get it. And you got it just like that. And it was just like this snowball of like somebody would be like, hey, have you ever trapped muskrats? And I'm like, not yet, but let's give it a shot. And I just kept, YouTube asking people, like just figuring it out as I went.
That's a good story to hear, and it's not dissimilar to my own. Like especially up in the little town where I trap. Obviously, I'm targeting the critters that I'm targeting. However, like you know, uh, something gets in your house, whether it's a skunk under the house or you have a pack rat or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden like word gets out, it's like, well, call Zach, let's see if he can do it. And most of the
Yep.
time you YouTube it, you figure it out, and you start to learn as you go, which is a lot of fun. But
No, yeah.
at what
As long
point
as
then,
you,
like
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, at what point did you start to tilt then and say like this might be a business here?
I mean, like I don't run like a legit business per se, but like it just kind of, so my father-in-law in the area I live in now, he's a beef farmer. My brother-in-law is a beef farmer. They know all the farmers in the area. And years ago, the guy that I learned to coon hunt from, he was like the go-to guy for trapping. Like if you had a raccoon problem, you called him. Everybody knows him by name, like knew exactly who he was. Well, he actually passed away 3 years ago, unfortunately. And now it's gotten to the point where I've almost kind of like taken over that role. And
Mhm.
it's like slowly snowballing where it's like, oh, like we got somebody else who can take care of raccoons. And I mean, years ago, he had a live trap all summer long at every farm in a 10-mile radius. And it's slowly been kind of, as people are figuring out, I know how to do this now. Now, those same people are calling me. So I'm just kind of filling the gap for him.
Well, I mean, it's unfortunate he passed, but it's also awesome that you get to kind of carry the torch for him. Um, with your in-laws being beef farmers, do you guys have coyote problems? Because I know there's also wolves that have kind of started dipping into that area as well.
So I mean, wolves, you hear of one every once in a while down here, but I don't think most people around here really know what a wolf looks like. So it might just be a big coyote, in my opinion. We do have a lot of coyotes, but we also have a lot of hound hunters in the winter that are chasing them pretty good. And they're pretty on edge in my area. I chase them a little bit. I'll catch them here and there, but not really my main concern. There's plenty of guys chasing them in the winter time once it snows.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I've noticed, at least on your Instagram where you and I first had connected, was you do post a decent amount on like trapping history. Like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, did interest in trapping history come after you got into trapping, or was it always something that was kind of there, just like the history of the West and Midwest?
I think it was so when I never knew that my grandpa like was really ever into trapping or knew about trapping or anything like that. And he grew up in the UP. He was a big deer hunter. I know he liked to hunt rabbits when he was a kid. And once I got started in trapping, he started telling me all these stories of like his cousins and uncles. And he actually brought me to a spot in the UP where they used to drop his cousin off in the fall, and they would have to wait until ice up. They would drop him off in the fall at this cabin. He would walk 10 miles north, and he had a cabin back on the paper mill land. And then, like, every month or so, he'd walk back, they'd resupply him. And he just started telling me all these stories. And it just, I don't know, that lifestyle intrigues me.
I mean, to put you on the spot, like, does any certain historical story stick out to you as a favorite or something that just like, oh, that represents what trapping is?
I mean, I always like watching, Jeremiah Johnson. And then there's like the I think it's called Mountain Men or Mountain Man. It's almost kind of like a spin-off of that. I always just I it intrigues me, those guys that were just, that was their main concern, was just keep heading west, and all they were looking for was beaver and just
Yeah.
living a nice simple life.
Well, it's so hard to get that nowadays. I think clearly when I talk about people who do type 2 fun, so like the wrestling, the jujitsu, the marathons, whatever it is, like whatever your flavor of suffering is, I always felt up until I got into trapping like I was trying to find that thing, like trying to find that grit and resilience that was, just a part of life back in the day, but trying to just almost fake it in this new age. And then I found trapping and realized you can kind of step in that time machine and go back to that. And it's still very difficult. It's, low probability chances. It's hard work. It's in the wintertime. I'm assuming that's probably what drew you in too, is it's hard work.
Well, and I think what like really excited me was that first time going up north beaver trapping. And so we went and stayed at my buddy's, I think it was his uncle's cabin. And we were probably about an hour south of the UP border. And we ran a trap line that it was like 9 hours of just driving, hiking in the woods, setting traps, driving. And it was like 4 days straight of just getting dirty and trapping. And it just, I don't know, when I was doing that, it was like, this is it. This is what I want to be doing.
And I'd be curious, how do we get that love affair instilled in like young men today? Like that's one thing that I'm constantly curious about because so many people are just stuck right here. And for those who can't see, I'm holding up my cell phone, like, you know, young people, and I'm guilty too of just getting sucked into this little vortex of a hellhole of a phone where that's our world, but that's not the real world. And I think exposing kids like your daughter, who's now 14 and loves it, my kids being exposed to it, I think it is so much benefit on like brain development and just realizing there's more than what's in your phone out there.
Definitely. And that's why I actually, so the old guy I was talking about, the coon hunter, he's got two grandkids that live only about 5 miles from me. And then I also have two nephews and a niece that live on my in-laws or my brother-in-law's farm. And it's like any chance I get to bring them, like if I'm close by and there's traps nearby, I'll call up their parents and I'm like, if they want to come, come with, hang out, watch. And it's to the point where like I don't know if you looked on my Instagram, little Bubba. I've been deer hunting with him since he could walk through the woods, and like he was always trapping with his grandpa. He will see me put a picture that I got traps out, and within 2 minutes, it's like, hey, like come pick me up if you get a chance. Like I'm free, I got nothing going on. I want to go trapping, and I love bringing kids like that where they're pumped to be out there. Like try to push that on kids, get more kids doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah. How do they react in the first shed? Because I think that was a little bit of a shock for my daughter at first too. I think she loved the anatomy of it. Like once we got into it, and she knows how to skin out a beaver better than a lot of adults, I think. But it's one of those things that can go really well or kind of be off-putting. And do you expose them to the first shed side as well?
Yeah, I'll like if I go and pick Bubba up, as long as he's got time, if he wants to come with, I let him start skinning coon. I mean, he's been watching people do that since he can remember, and my daughter doesn't mind it unless it's a skunk or a mink. But yeah, I mean, I just not like I force it on them, but if they're into it, I'm more than willing to teach them.
Yeah. And then, like speaking of like the modern world and people being stuck in our phones, it's clear that a lot of people have strong opinions about trapping, even though they might not be exposed to it or understand, the ethics that go behind it. But what would you consider to be the main thing that the common person misunderstands about trapping?
I think population control, definitely. I always tell my daughter, so when I was probably 12, 13, 14 years old, my dad still helped out on my grandma's farm, and there was always stray cats there, like always 20 to 30 stray cats. And that's a big problem around here is people will have a litter of cats at their house from their cat that they leave loose. They don't know what to do, and they just go and drop a bunch of cats off at a random farm. And I still remember at one point there had to have been close to 40 of them. And they looked all sickly, googly eyes, nasty, nasty fur. They just looked inbred.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, just like that, one day they were gone. And I went up to my dad and I was like, what happened to all the cats? And he's like, they died. Like they died off. They got sick. There was too many of them. They were inbred. That's what happens.
Mm.
And people don't understand that the same thing can happen in the wild. They just don't realize that it can happen because there's people like me, you, and the rest of the trappers that are out here doing this, but they don't see it. So they just think everything's fine and dandy out there.
Yeah. And yeah, I've seen some real bad fox up my way with like distemper and,
Oh yeah, I think that was last fall. I took care of 6 distemper coon just on my in-laws farm alone. So I can only imagine what was floating around here.
yeah. And it's sad. And I think that to your point, not that you want to expose everybody to like the cruelty of nature, but like the ethics of a quick dispatch from a trapper versus, that long drawn out inability to eat, losing your fur in the cold. Like those critters with distemper or any of these like parvo, whatever it is, like they look rough. They look like they've been run through a wood chipper and they're just barely hanging on until they pass. And that's a rough way to go.
Oh yeah, and I mean we even I don't know if you guys have mange out that way, but we get quite a few coyotes and fox with mange around here. That was a couple years back. I shot a coyote out of my stand deer hunting, and by the time I got up to it, one of my buddies was hunting like just down the fence line from me, and all of a sudden he came and handed me a glove, and he's like, "I would not touch that with a bare hand." Like it was looking pretty bad. Like I put it out of its misery.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I wish people could see that, the efforts that we go through to help with the population control, which prevents those things or at least slows it down a little bit, especially in dense areas that have a lot of critters running around.
Definitely, and two, like I don't think a lot of these, I have no problem if somebody eats meat. I have no problem if somebody just wants to be a vegan. But one of the best quotes I ever heard was from Marty Maiorato, who used to be on Mountain Men. And he said, "If you're living on this earth, something is dying for it."
Mhm.
And I kind of thought about that last fall when I brought my niece, two nephews and my niece to the back corner of my father-in-law's field, and there's probably 4 acres of corn tore down from raccoons. Because what they'll actually do is bite the bottom of the stalk, drop it down, and then they'll eat all the cobs off of it. Well, it's like I'm out here taking care of that for him, but the people that are eating these crops don't truly know that something's dying so that they can have these crops, because it just shows up in the store for them and it's all fine and dandy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it'd probably be a shock to people if you had a sticker on everything that you purchased. It even might be a vegetable that just had a list of all the field mice and every bug and everything else that passed in order to grow that and keep it stable enough to get to your shelves at whatever grocery store you go shopping at.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even there was a woman down the road from my grandma's farm years ago, and my grandma would always ask her, like, "Oh, can my grandson go and turkey hunt? Can he turkey hunt?" And she, "Nope, nope, I like the turkeys there. They're fine. Like, he's not hunting here." All it took was 1 year of them tearing her garden up, and it was like, "Yep, have them come over here. Get rid of the turkeys."
Yeah, it's funny, like the weird ecosystem stuff that people will get tied to something and then very quickly change their mind when it affects something they love. Speaking of
Definitely.
just getting up to speed, it sounded like you had some good mentorship, YouTube as well. But if you think back just through your history of trapping, can you remember or recall like the biggest mistake you ever made on your trap line that might have cost you a catch, or you know just didn't go the way you expected it to?
Uh, I mean, honestly, nothing major, just not seating traps in properly, having like a loose coyote trap at a dirt hole or something, not bedding them good. Just, simple stuff like that.
Yeah. And what about the fur shed? I mean, I know you started with fur before you
Uh,
even got into trapping, but like anything or even something you might have seen like your nephews or somebody else do that's just like common mistake that you've seen over and over again that you would want to avoid if you were just getting into fur handling.
uh, I mean, obviously putting holes in them, fleshing them, but I know the big problem I always have when I'm showing some of these younger kids is once you get to the ears and the eyes, it's like you got to take your time there. Like we can't just start shoving the knife in and all of a sudden we got an ear hole that's like 1.5 inches round. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. And I have to remind myself to slow down when I get there too.
Oh, I still do as well.
And it's usually after a few cuss words when I forgot to tell myself to slow down. And then you got to get the sewing kit out. But, live and learn, I guess, or live and don't learn. But
Yeah, definitely.
so, what's your winter look like? Has trapping season opened for you guys yet? I mean, ours really opens here in about 15 days, full stop in Idaho, for a lot of the water critters. But what are you looking at this winter?
So we had a line going last week. Like I was with you, me and my wife went up north, so I had to kind of pull that. But we I think so far we got 12 coon and 1 skunk, and I had a farmer call me that he just chopped some corn and he's like, "This is some high dollar corn. I don't need the coons taking care of it." So we were trapping for him, and then tomorrow we're actually going to get another line going, and I got a handful of kids that I'm hopefully going to pick up throughout the weekend and bring them along for a little bit of fun.
That's awesome. And then are you selling fur at this point? Like, I'm just curious, like, I
Uh,
mean, I don't know what numbers you're putting up and to make it profitable or not, but just curious if you are, and then if you have any outlook on, the fur market this season or not.
so when the first probably 4 to 5 years I was selling fur, I was selling to NAFA and shipping them up there. Honestly, the last how many years it's been just kind of send them out to the tannery, make stuff, or attempt to tan them ourselves. This is the first year in a while I'm probably going to send a few furs in. We already got that 1 skunk. Obviously, everybody's talking about the skunk market right now, so hopefully we can get into a few more of those. And then, I mean, things like coons might kind of hang on to those and mess around tanning and making a few things at home. I actually just bought my daughter a pile of like outlines to make hats and gloves and koozies and all that stuff. So we might start messing around with that a little bit.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, that's my daughter loves to craft and to do things with a sewing machine that I cannot. So I think that's probably a good plan. Um, Favorite animal to trap? I know you've kind of hit everything, like, but if you had to pick a critter to trap for the rest of your life and not touch any others, what would it be?
Definitely beaver. That's my favorite.
So I get that answer a lot, and I think that would be my answer too. But I'm curious as to why. Like, what is it about beaver trapping that
Um,
is so good?
For me personally, like I live in farm country, but like I said, I'm only 35, 40 minutes north of Milwaukee, and we don't really get that many beaver down here. But so usually I'm heading up to like basically just below the UP line, and I think it's just everything involved with it. Like going up there with a couple of buddies, setting a bunch of traps, driving down gravel logging roads, just the camaraderie, and it's just it's always a fun time for me. And I don't know, trapping beaver's fun, super fun.
Yeah, I love being in the water. I like you said, it also might just be that throwback to history or nostalgia or whatever you want to call it, because you're walking through a creek bed or some flooded plain, and you do feel like Jeremiah Johnson or somebody like back in the day that founded this country. It's exactly what we were founded on. So it's a pretty cool little step back in time.
Sometimes I wonder if it's so like I've heard a lot of people talk about how even like a 3-year-old can catch a fish and they still are like so excited. And it's almost like that it's ingrained in us that like that instinctual thing where like I'm gonna eat. Like we caught this fish, I'm gonna eat, and that's why you're so excited. And I'm sure all of us kind of have that in us where like you catch a beaver, it's the same thing. Like I get that same feeling like we got it, we got one. I could catch 300 beaver and I'd still be running up to that trap when I see some fur sticking out of the water.
Yeah, that little humpback or a little tail or something like that. I think that would be a fun experiment or TV show, would be to take city slickers or people who just have limited or zero exposure or interest, take them out for 4 days, do the tough work of setting a beaver line or something like that, and just look at their reaction, even if they're not, you know, pro eating meat or whatever the case would be. I would bet that a handful of them would be like, "Oh, we did it." Like you said, that instinctual thing might come through, and they'd be like, "That was pretty cool."
Oh, definitely. Like I actually brought my dad up beaver trapping last year. It was just him and and I wasn't trapping hard. I think I had like a dozen 330s out. And we were just kind of, cruising back roads and setting traps. And by like the third beaver, he was so excited. Like all of a sudden I'd look out the window of the truck and I'd be like, I think that trap set off. He'd be jumping out and he's running through the brush and like running up along the creek. Like I think it definitely kicks in whether you've been into trapping or not.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. So, with all of what you know about trapping, what you see in your local area for nuisance trapping, recreational trapping, what do you see as the future of trapping?
I think it's optimistically, I hope the fur market goes back up. Whether that does or not, I think the future is definitely going to be in nuisance trapping because, like I deal with here all the time, like the second somebody finds out that I trap raccoons, and anybody that was into it for the money years ago, they're nowhere to be found right now. They don't even waste their time.
Mhm.
And I think nuisance trapping is where it's definitely gonna lead more towards. And then hopefully, um, you've had how many people on here that are talking about making their own things and selling their own things. I think it'll kind of lean more toward trying to promote people around here to wear fur instead of focusing on China buying it or Russia buying it or the Scandinavian countries buying it. Hopefully, we can kind of push that around here to help our fur prices go up as well.
Yeah, I don't know how we tackle that one. I think that would be the best case scenarios, like American beaver, American made. Like, here's your nice shawl for the winter that'll last as long as you take care of this thing and it's biodegradable and blah blah blah. But
Yep.
I don't know how we get over like the cheap stuff you get from China and you know like you said, I've had people on, and I think people are pushing for it. And the pessimistic side says it'll never happen, but the optimistic side says I hope it does.
Definitely. And I was even watching a video that Grunwald put up, and he was showing some different jackets that they were making where it was like a fur liner with like a puffy outside. So it's like I could see if we kind of modernize how some of these furs are used compared to like the old school, ritzy lady mink fur coat. If we can kind of like modernize those and be like, hey, this thing's gonna last forever compared to some fake fur plastic that is gonna go end up in a landfill, hopefully that'll kind of work itself out.
Yeah, and it had it for a while. Like I know Canada Goose, like their jackets had coyote fur lining, and then they got all hit with the antis, and they eventually, I think this past year, stopped using real fur. But I agree. I think that kind of modern garment with like a fur twist, whether that's from a liner or something like that, could go a long way.
Yeah, definitely.
And hopefully drive the market up. Okay, so I always end with a couple different questions, but I do want to know this. Like you've been not necessarily trapping your whole life, but like been outside in the woods. What's the wildest experience that you've ever had in the outdoors?
So I was actually just talking to my daughter about this right before I came on here. Years It was probably my second year trapping. We were in the state forest near where I lived, and there was like an old like service road that went through, and then it opened up to this wide open field where they planted a bunch of like 1 foot tall pine trees. And I had a coon trap there, and there was a day where it was like a Saturday. It was raining like heck all morning, and she was young enough. I didn't want to bring her out right away. And then we had a break in the store. I was like, all right, let's quick go check that trap. And she could walk, but not like run through the woods with me. So I carried her all the way out there. It was probably a half-mile walk. And then we got out there. I had a raccoon in a foothold, and I just set her down, turned around, dispatched the raccoon. And when I turned back around, I could see a front coming in, and you could see the trees starting to blow. So I let the coon out of the trap. I was like, all right, we better get back to the truck. And as we were walking up that old service road, I don't know if it was a tornado or what it was, but we had wild winds, and we were in a bunch of trees.
Oof.
And I am not kidding you. We had trees falling over the place. Like I got home and I was like, thank you, Jesus, we are alive. And I honestly was afraid to bring her in the woods for a while after that.
That is a terrifying story. Like that is like one of my ultimate nightmares. Like especially where I'm at, we have so many burns and there's so many like standing deads, and you know the idea of a big windstorm coming in and like you'll hear, but I can't imagine being in a relatively dense dead area and then you actually see the trees falling around you. I bet you were puckered up pretty tight though.
Oh yeah, I had my daughter in one arm. I contemplated drinking the coon, but I was just running as fast as I could, and luckily,
Yeah, that's definitely a praise Jesus moment for sure. I'd be doing the exact same thing, and I think I'd be
definitely.
a little. I'm curious though. Did it register at all with her? Because it's that's one of those weird things with kids. Like sometimes they understand the imminent danger, and then sometimes they're just like, "Meh, that was fine."
Yeah, she didn't. I don't think she realized what was going. I kind of, I was dang near carrying her like a baby, and her face was in my shirt. And I ask her to this day, and she's like, I have no recollection of that.
Yeah, that is a wild story and one that went the right way. So it's a good one to tell in
Yes.
hindsight. Thankfully, you guys both got out of there okay. Now, I do always end on a hypothetical. So for you, I'm just curious. Would you rather have your truck stuck axle deep in a beaver dam at 5 a.m. or have your bait bucket spill open inside the cab of your truck on a hot July day?
Definitely definitely truck stuck for
Okay.
sure.
Well, otherwise, is that because do you share a truck? I share a truck with my wife. So if I had like a bait bucket spilled over in the truck, I think I'd be dead anyways because she would murder me.
Oh, no, my wife's got her own truck, but I've spilt bait in my truck, and I'd rather not do that.
Fair enough, man. Well, Jake, I appreciate this on a late Thursday night, and man, it was awesome chatting with you and getting to know more about you. Like, where can people find about you. I know you have an Instagram or anything else you've got going on that people can reach out to you.
I just got my Instagram trapper.jakes.journal, and then I got a regular Instagram trapper.jake. That's more just kind of everything, but the trapper.jake.journal I made that just for trapping. I actually years ago, I don't know if you ever saw that Trapper Jake documentary.
Yep.
I was at a trapping convention with my buddy, and he introduced me to somebody as Trapper Jake, and I was like, all right, we're going to stick with that. So that's what we've been sticking with.
Well, it's funny when I first saw your Instagram, that's exactly what I first thought about, because I watched that documentary a long time ago. And, in my book, Turning Feral, I actually write about watching that and then trying to dispatch a fox, the way Trapper Jake did, which was, I don't do it that way. I still use my 22. I think a few times of trying my luck with a pipe and a stick just didn't work out for me too well. But yeah, that's pretty cool. But man, I wish you luck tomorrow. Did your wife end up running that ultra marathon? I gotta ask.
She did. So she got done with her fire training, and then she's been a little sore the last couple of days, but she finished it. So
well, that's awesome. Well, you guys are obviously out there getting after it, and that's the best thing we can do, and coach up the next generation to come after us. So man, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. And for everybody listening, we'll catch you on another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast.
thanks for having me.